All right. Hello, all. Welcome. This is the April edition of the NCPEID APE Collaborative. So, welcome all. I'm Dr. Melissa Bittner, and okay, sorry, I thought my Wi-Fi froze, but I think I'm good. I am going to go ahead and share screen and introduce our speakers today. We're tentatively slated to go for an hour, and first up will be the APE practitioner interview tips. We have, let's see, we have Katrina, Dale, and Brookes, who will be joining us today. They're going to speak about 15-20 minutes on interview tips, and then we're going to switch over to higher ed APE interview tips, and actually myself and Rebecca Lytle will be covering that. Once we are done with both of those segments, we'll open it up to the audience for about 10 minutes or so for some question and answer. As always, we are live right now on NCPEID Facebook, and we are also recording for NCPEID YouTube and the What's New in Adapted Physical Education podcast. A big thank you, as always, to the NCPEID Membership Subcommittee. We have Danielle Musser with the Colorado APE Conference Director. We've got Andy Pitchford from Oregon State University, Heidi Ambrosius, Moreno Valley Unified School District. I'm Melissa Bittner from CSU Long Beach, and Lainey Case from Chico State. All right, to begin our session today, we have Katrina, Brookes, and Dale Katrina's from San Diego Unified School District, who is one of the AP coordinators, and Brookes and Dale are from Los Angeles Unified School District, and they are AP coordinators there. So today they're going to talk about what you need to know to secure an APE position. So ladies, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, my name is Katrina McClanahan, and I'm one of the lead teachers for San Diego Unified. We also have Los Angeles Unified. Do you want to introduce yourselves before we get started?
Sure. My name is Brookes Marindin, and I work with the Adapted PE program in LA. Dale?
I am Dale Munn, and I work under Brookes for Los Angeles Unified.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Next slide. Thank you. Today, we're going to be talking to you from the perspective of large districts with sizable staff. We are going to be speaking to what professional qualities we are looking for in an individual and within the interview process. Next slide. So just to tell you a little bit about us, we are in California. We are two of the largest districts in California. I'll speak to San Diego Unified. We are the second largest district in the state of California behind Los Angeles. We roughly have about 100,000 students and about 200 educational sites, about 14,700 students with IEPs. Our district has 39 adapted physical educators who serve approximately about 1,900 students across the district from preschool through high school. Our department does have 3 lead teachers to support our APE educators. We as lead teachers do carry a teaching caseload along with supporting the needs of our department and our fellow adapted PE teachers. At this time, we have a centralized system for initial assessments that come through our central adapted PE office. We have 9 APE staff members who are assigned to perform those initial assessments across the district in conjunction with their teaching assignment. We found that this has given us opportunities for APE teachers to work together in strengthening assessment skills and also putting 2 sets of eyes on students to increase the consistency of eligibility. San Diego Unified also encourages and supports and fosters a collaborative and inclusive model across our district that supports students in their least restrictive environment for physical education. And we have multiple partnerships throughout the district and with community partners, but one of our strongest has been Special Olympics. Thank you.
And as you can see, Los Angeles Unified is the second largest district in the United States. We have well over 500,000 students, close to 95,000 with IEPs. For those students, we do have about 6,500 who receive APE services. So our APE staff is large. We also include under our APE program, recreation therapists. So we are definitely looking at accessing of the physical education curriculum, state mandated curriculum, as well as the educational program with the addition of the recreation therapists. We do use an inclusive model, and we are working with kiddos from 3 to 22. Our program is the one that will hold the interviews and then send on those that we hire to our HR. We do have many partnerships with Special Olympics, Angel Cities, several community, Shane's Inspiration. We really try to foster the students and parents learning about community opportunities so that they can transfer their skills outside of the school site. We also run our own sports programs so that 3-year-olds to 22-year-olds can participate in game-like situations or intramural situations. So thank you.
And Brookes, this one is yours.
Yes.
Next slide.
So the general qualifications we're looking for is really a holistic, comprehensive addition to our adaptive PE program. We do look at your education and life experience. Please make sure you bring all of that information during our interview. We look that you are able to communicate via electronically, verbally, do well explaining information to different stakeholders. Of course, your kiddos, their parents, then the IEP team. And we do look at your professional skills. We figure that everything that you've done has led you to this point. And so please make sure that you highlight that so that we are able to see you again as a complete product. Next slide.
Okay, so in an interview, we know that it's imperative for you to showcase your content knowledge. So please keep that in mind when you are interviewing with any district. We want to hear about your passion for teaching, what influenced you to pursue adapted physical education, and really what is your teaching philosophy? Weave that into the conversations that you have with the panel that you're interviewing with. Showcase what your knowledge is of the state PE standards and your state's APE guidelines. Let us know that you understand motor development, developmentally appropriate activities, and have a large, expansive knowledge of a variety of disabilities. Think about articulating how you would structure your classes to include skill development, social development, and also behavior management. How do you collect data? What is your assessment knowledge and your assessment experience? Tell us all of that. Tell us about your IEP experience and how you approach the IEP team and parent involvement. Communicate with us your experience and your knowledge of curriculum development and goal writing. Next slide.
Next slide.
Okay, for the interview process, there's 3 parts to our interview process. And first we have the resume. And what we expect to see on a resume is we expect to have your contact information, your education, and you don't have to include your high school experiences, but we do want to know your work experience, your any professional development you've been a part of, and then some specialized skills. You know, who are you? Tell us who you are in that resume. And then the interview process will be conducted for LA, it will be conducted by the APE leadership team. We do not, our employees do not, or our interviewees do not go through HR. We do the interview firsthand. And to prepare for our interviews, practice answering questions beforehand, study the job description, and then learn about our district, learn about the different areas. We're a huge district. Try to learn as much as you can coming into this district. And when you're in our interview, please do not fake it. Be as real as you can. We can typically see through people. So we really want you just to be real. Tell us why you're in here for APE. You know, just tell us who you are personally for your interview. We're really looking for people who have a passion to teach APE. And if you have a passion, then I think you could do this job. Then for the portfolio, you can bring your university portfolio to the interview, and things that you would put into that portfolio would be assessment reports, some IEPs. If you've written IEPs, if you've written reports, that would be great. Any lesson plans or unit plans that you've come up with that you have, that you're proud of, bring those. And then teaching practices. If there's anything unique that you've done in the past, let us know, show us. And then references and letters of recommendation. We do need to see those. And then anything relevant with social media profiles. You know, there's a lot of different profiles out there. Share them with us if they're relevant.
And
Go ahead.
No, come on, Dale.
Okay, when you're in the interview process, prepare to answer things such as standard-based questions or standard-based instruction, critical concepts. Okay, what support for student learning? Think about how you're going to be able to support students during their learning process for APE. Okay, behavior management strategies. We all know that behavior issues have skyrocketed since COVID, and kids are having different issues. So think about some of those issues that people might be having, and how would you manage it? What strategies would you use? Task analysis and skill progression. Okay, we're going to ask you about a skill and how to teach it. So you need to be able to task analyze that skill and tell us about it. IEP experience. Hopefully you're coming in with some IEP experience, but it's not something we know that some of you may not have it, and that's fine. It's something you can learn on the job. Experience or knowledge about some disabilities. You need to know about the disabilities that are out there. Have some sort of knowledge of what is going to be taught. Assessment tools. You need to have some assessment tools under your belt. We use a variety. We use many. And in LAUSD, we can provide you with most assessment tools. Like Brooke said before, you need to be able to use technology. You need to be able to collect data. That is very helpful. Full inclusion. You know, how do you fully include your students into classes with their gen ed peers? That's a really big idea that we've tried to put forth in our district. We've lost a little bit through COVID, but we're going back to it immediately. We want to see those kids participating with their non-disabled peers. And then how are you working with others? You have many people that you're going to be working with in a school site. You have the paraprofessionals, you have the teachers, you have the custodians, you have the admin. There's so many people that you need to be able to collaborate with. And then come in kind of talking about a sample lesson. We may ask you, tell us about a lesson you've taught, and be very, very clear, very specific. Okay, also in the interview process, tell us, we asked this, tell us something about yourself that we didn't cover. What is special about you? tell us what you like to do on the weekends. What kind of fun do you have? Portfolio. Remember, a portfolio should show your work from your school, your APE classes. Okay, show us what you're doing, what you did in school. Benefits and pay scale. We are hopefully our teachers are now getting a raise. We're hoping. HR. If you have any questions about the pay scale, we cannot answer that question. It would be HR to answer any questions. Make sure you are in the process of clearing your preliminary credential, including the induction program, which we do offer here in LA. So we have that covered for you, free of cost. Brookes, did I miss anything of importance? Equipment, we provide a large amount of equipment. We have 4 sheds, looking at number 5, spread out throughout the district. For us, good APE teachers are have everything they need. They're happy APE teachers are good APE teachers. Therefore, we always want them to have the equipment they need.
I agree, Dale. I agree, Dale. I'd also like to add that during this time of the interview process, this is your time. This is your opportunity to share anything that was not covered in the formal interview process. And in our district, and many districts are going to do this differently. We do have to have the applicant go through HR, and then we work with HR, but we always ask the applicants to do their homework about the district, research the district. And if you find the adapted physical education or special ed director's name at the districts, reach out to them and let them know that you're highly interested in being a team member with that district. It's at that time when you are asking your questions or you are sharing anything that wasn't covered, this is really your time to share what sets you apart from the other candidates. Make that lasting impression on the panel at that time. And, definitely ask about the benefits, the PD opportunities, what kind of support will you receive from the department? Induction is a big one. Our district does offer induction at no cost to clear your preliminary credential. And again, just like Dale said, facilities, equipment, any itinerant teacher questions that you may have, and also potentially ask about what's the district philosophy on the value of physical education and inclusion. That could be an important question, that the district probably should answer you at that time, because that's extremely important. That's all I have to add. Anything else before the next slide? Okay, so basically in summary, the 3 Ps: be prepared, be professional, and share a portfolio if you have one. Be prepared, study that job description and learn about the district that you're going to be interviewing with. Really, really important. Be professional. First impressions are really important in any sort of setting, whether you're doing a Zoom interview or whether you're doing an in-person interview. Portfolio. If you have work to share, show me, don't tell me. Let your work speak for yourself. If you can share that in electronically or physically, that's fine too. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate the time, Melissa, for including us.
Thanks again for joining us. I will say that I know you all have presented on this at the National APE conference a few different years previously, so much appreciated. And yeah, so this group also comes, and at Long Beach State, Barry LeVay has established this many years ago, but they usually come in the spring and give a version of this presentation to our APE students at Long Beach State. So much appreciated for sharing with all. Next up, I get to actually sit on the other side of this. This is my first time, I think, co-presenting here, and I am joined by Rebecca Lytle. who is a professor at CSU Chico. And we're going to talk now about higher education interview tips. So I counted it up, and I think I've actually been part of a committee 5 different times, and I've chaired specifically an APE committee. So, and I know Rebecca has much more experience than I do. So Rebecca, you want to share at Chico and other places your experiences serving on a higher ed chair search? Oh, Rebecca, you're on mute.
Got to get with the program here. First, before I start in on anything, I really want to thank Brookes, Dale, and Katrina. That was a phenomenal presentation. And I think a lot of what they shared applies across the board for interviewing. And it was really helpful to hear the kinds of things they shared, because I think the higher ed folks can absolutely take that to the students that we train. So thank you for sharing that. And I think huge kudos to the 3 of you for the work you do. So as a faculty member at Chico State, I've been there for over 20 years, and I've had the opportunity to serve on many committees, hiring committees for adaptive PE and also for other positions in biomechanics or exercise physiology. So I'm happy to share with you my thoughts and knowledge, both from a faculty member position and from a chair position. And also I did serve as a dean back east for a short period of time. We didn't do any searches, but I certainly have had plenty of opportunity to deal with personnel issues as a chair and both as a dean. And those relate exactly to hiring. So let's carry on with this, where we are in our slides, and we'll tell you more about hiring in higher ed. So first of all, as a new candidate coming out of a PhD program, it's important to think about what type of a position you want to apply for. Most of you are training at Research One institutions for your PhD. And so what kind of a job do you want when you leave? Do you want to stay with a lot of research, or do you want to go to more of a teaching institution? Those are really important decisions to make, because if you go to a Research One institution and you're really all about teaching, you may very well struggle with the tenure process if your focus is not on research, and vice versa. If you really have passion for research and that's your primary focus, and you go to a teaching institution, you may struggle with the teaching piece. So do think about where your passions lie. And clearly in every job, you have to be able to do both regardless. But there are some positions that really are solely research or solely teaching. So consider that carefully. The other thing to consider is, who are the collaborators? I think it's important to look at the campus where you're going and think about, if you're applying for an adaptive position, or adapting combined with pedagogy or motor development or whatever combination, who are the other faculty in those areas on that campus? And will they be good mentors for you, or do they want to collaborate with new faculty? So that's another thought to consider. And then salaries. I know that, Melissa and I are both in California, and a lot of times we hear, I'm sure she's heard and I've heard, candidates say, oh, California's way too expensive, or, I'm looking at the real estate and I don't want to apply out there because the cost of living is so high. I do think you have to balance the position with the costs. And we've never had anybody who's come to our campus as a new faculty member that wanted to stay, not be able to stay and be successful and, buy a home and be successful living in California. And I think Melissa could probably attest to Southern California as well. The nature of the positions, often the salaries will be a little bit commensurate with where the job is. For example, the starting position where Melissa is might be higher than the starting position in Chico, because she's right in the middle of LA and we're in urban Northern California. So those can make a difference. Okay, next slide.
Real quick as well, where to find open positions. So
oh yeah, thanks, Melissa.
Take a look at higheredjobs.com, which is the Chronicle of Higher Education. That's a great resource. Another is the American Kinesiology Association. So those are a couple of good sources as to who posts jobs that you can just be in the know of where are current openings for this academic year.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, so next up, application materials. And this is going to vary university by university. So this is a bit of a template, but a few examples just so you are aware. Most universities are probably going to ask for some type of curriculum vitae, a CV, and a letter of interest. In addition, some other things they might expect out of you and request are a statement on your teaching philosophy or a diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, DEIA statement. So again, depends on where you're applying and what their committee is asking for. So with these, one thing I recommend is that your committee who's looking at these materials are looking for samples of your writing. So, and that's another thing I guess they might ask. They might ask for, I should add that to that list. They might ask for a recent article that you've published. So with these statements, they're gonna edit and look for grammar. They're going to look at your writing style, certainly your background and experiences. Would you fit in well at this university? A few little pro tips. I know this is something I look back and regretted a little bit is I think in my letter of interest about 5 different times I name dropped the school I was applying for, but also realized you might be applying to a dozen different schools. And that means 5 different times you have to change the name of the school, the university that you're applying to. I guarantee I probably forgot to update one of the school names, and that does not look good to a committee if you have the wrong university in that letter of interest. So with that, the applications are going to be screened then by a committee, typically 3 members of the department. At least for us, it would be 2 members of physical education, teacher education, and then the 3rd member would be someone else within the kinesiology department. Maybe it's an exercise science member or an athletic training member, but again, that's going to vary school to school. And what that committee is going to look for is your ability to teach, conduct research, and provide service to the university. You know, will you be able to get tenure at the university? From there, typically, again, it varies, but 7 to 10 applicants are going to be screened and selected for that phone interview.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, helpful information. And I can say something about that. The paperwork that you send is the first thing they're going to see from you. And so just as Melissa said about the importance of what you put in your letter and making sure there's no grammatical errors, the same thing, make sure your vita looks nice. I've seen vitas from people that just didn't look very nice. And it does set an impression, even if the content is good. You want to make sure that you're really putting a good presentation forward. Make sure your paperwork is dressed for success as well. So here's the part. Oh my gosh, you got the phone interview. So what do you need to do? It's kind of like Tinder. You've been communicating with somebody and you finally, found somebody who wants to talk with you. And so
I'm impressed you know Tinder. Look at you, Rebecca.
so now, you're going to have like an actual voice-to-voice call with this person. So you need to know something about the university and the location. There's nothing worse than interviewing somebody and they think you're in an urban area and you're in a rural area, they say something that's clear they have no clue about the program or the place where they're interviewing. So make sure you know something about the university, the location, the programs they offer, review their websites, take a look at the faculty, how many faculty are in their department and what areas do they teach in. Have your vita and philosophy and any other cheat sheets you want to have ready and in front of you. When you're doing a phone interview, they can't see what you're looking at. You can pull things, a lot of times students are like, oh, I'm not going to remember what I put on my Vita because there's so many different things. And have it sitting in front of you. Even if you're in a face-to-face interview for our students, we tell them you can have that with you. So use what you need to help you be successful on your phone interview. Look at the articles published by the faculty before the interview. And if there are particular areas that you're interested, you might ask them about those at the end of the interview or comment on them to show that you're paying attention and you're interested in who they are and what they do. Think about what you're looking for in a job too. We mentioned this earlier, more research, less teaching, more teaching, less research, whichever. And then you might also ask about, if your focus is adapted, are there service learning opportunities? Do they have disability programs on site? If not, are they open to those being developed? And then you might also look at faculty to collaborate with, which we talked about briefly in the other slide, whether that's in the department that you would be working in or in departments across campus. For example, I do a lot of work with the speech pathology program because we have a strong speech path program. If we had a PT program, we might also be collaborating with them. Special ed could be a good collaborative fit for someone with adapted. If your secondary areas, exercise science, maybe you're working with the PT programs or other kinds of things. So there are a lot of opportunities for sort of cross-pollination.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Very good tips. So next up, the phone interview. Typically now, post-pandemic era, the phone interview will be conducted on Zoom with your screen off. Also, typically it's going to be about 45 minutes. The committee chair at the start of the meeting is going to tell the candidate the number of questions and how long the interview will, approximately last. So the chair might say, like, we have 8 questions and we have about 45 minutes. So that's really going to help you, because you need to pace yourself and not elaborate really, really long on some questions, knowing that you've got 8 questions to get through. But it also means don't blitz like a rabbit through all your questions if there are only 8 questions and you've only been going for 5 minutes and you find yourself on question 5. That means you need to elaborate a lot more. So try to keep that pacing in mind. That's really important, that you pace the interview. Here are a few example questions. Again, specific to no university, just some example questions that might be asked. You're quite possibly going to be asked to summarize your academic background, what training you believe uniquely qualifies you for this particular APE position. Certainly, probably going to be asked what experiences you have working with racially, ethnically diverse populations. They're going to want you to share about your primary area of research interests. They're probably going to ask you something with describing your teaching experience in adapted PE as a practitioner and/or experience at the higher ed level. Maybe you're a graduate or a teaching associate, a teaching assistant. Most likely at the very end, the last question is going to be, do you have any questions you would like to share with the committee? Please always be prepared for this and have 2 to 3 questions. Now, we're going to share a few examples of some, at least what we think are some good questions to ask. You don't want to just like rattle off anything. Really think about some questions you might want to share here. So it might be, do you have any mentorship for new faculty? Another solid question in this area might be, do you have any lab or research support? Or what internal grants does the university have? This is a great time, if they haven't shared already, well, what's the teaching load? Is it a 3-3, a 4-4? What's the teaching load like at that university? Maybe what weighting is included for the RTP process. What % are you providing teaching? What % are you providing research? And what % are you providing service? And then, and I think Rebecca mentioned this previously about service learning or practicums. Do they have any at the campus that are already established, or are they open to establishing new practicums? And from this phone interview, typically the top 3 applicants will be selected for a face-to-face on-campus interview.
Okay, back to the Tinder dating. So the phone call went great, and you're actually going to have a face-to-face meeting. And why do I use Tinder? Why do I say that? It's certainly, it's an app that's used frequently right now by young people, but Tinder is a dating app, right? And it's about finding a good match, and interviewing for a campus is absolutely about finding a good match. And that means from both sides, not just the faculty picking you, but you picking the university that you want to work with. And so think about that on-campus interview as a giant dating experience, and trying to determine if this is going to be a good match for both parties. So typically that face-to-face interview when you come to the campus is 1 to 2 days, and you're going to fly or drive, and they will usually reimburse you. Usually they always reimburse you for your expenses to come, to fly out, and if you need to stay in a hotel. So be sure to dress for success. That's the first thing. You're applying for a professional position. You should be wearing professional clothes, a suit, or, you know, some dress, whatever, but professional clothing because of the nature of the job. And then that 2 days really has 3 major components. You'll have a host of meetings, you will do a teaching presentation, and you will do a research presentation. And all 3 parts are critical for a successful outcome. So let's just start with the meetings. You're going to meet a host of people, all the stakeholders who you're going to engage with if you were to be hired. So you're going to meet the dean, the department chair, the committee, the hiring committee will probably do their face-to-face interview with you. You'll likely have lunch with the department or other committee members. And then you might meet the diversity officer on campus or the grants office. You may have an opportunity to meet with students. I know at Chico, we always set up a time for them to have lunch with grad students so they can actually talk to our students and get a different perspective than just the faculty. So those meetings are all really important, and they are part of really figuring out who you are as a person. How do you communicate? You have good interpersonal skills. Can you collaborate with people? So those soft skills come out a lot in those general meetings. And then your teaching presentation. So you will be asked to teach a university class, and you should ask how many students are in the class and what is the classroom set up like, whether it's in a gym or a classroom, what kinds of technology, if you need to be using PowerPoint or not, or other technology. And then depending on the nature of that, you should dress appropriately. If they ask you to teach a pedagogy class and it is activity-based, you should bring clothes for that so that you can move around the room easily. You know, you don't want to be in a professional tight skirt where you can't like run around the gym to move around to students as you're teaching. So be sure you're prepared appropriately. Oftentimes the teaching presentation, it might be in the gym, it might be in a classroom where it's more lecture format, but whatever you do, that teaching presentation needs to be highly engaging. Universities are looking for people that aren't going to just stand up there and lecture. You need to do more than that. You need to present quality material. You need to apply the material. You need to do activities with the students of some kind to make sure that that learning is embedded for them and not just something that's passing across their visual and auditory input. So effective teaching is far more than just standing up there and presenting something. So think about that as you plan for your teaching presentation. And then the last piece is the research presentation. And this is a formal presentation where you're going to stand up and present, most likely, slides. Certainly, if you can make it engaging, that's great. but I just lost the slide to my screen here. Hang on. You need to be thinking about 1 to 2 studies that you maybe have done. You're going to want to present your dissertation research if you're finishing that up. If you are in the middle of it, it's okay to do a little more time on the literature review and the methodologies and how you're collecting your data, and certainly sharing where you are in that process, because the committee really wants to know that you're going to be finishing up. I think one of the first questions that our committee always asks if somebody is presenting their dissertation research is, where are you in the process? Have you finished collecting your data? And when do you expect to finish? And when do you expect to defend? Because you don't want to hire people that are ABD typically, unless they're like so close. So those are things to consider in the research presentation. And make sure you know your research really well. If you're presenting some preliminary research leading up to yours, make sure you know those studies really well and you can respond to questions. Because after the research presentation, they will open it up for questions, and faculty will, will try to ask you a few questions about what you have shared and where your research is going, and perhaps where you plan to go next after this.
Yeah, great point. And with that research presentation, it's a great way to connect with faculty who are at that university, and maybe we could collaborate. And also a really great opportunity to showcase, I can bring in grants and here's why, or here's some places that I might target in the future for monies to support my research.
Yeah, great additions. Absolutely.
All right, some final tips and advice. Give specific answers. Be memorable. And this is very similar to what Dale, Katrina, and Brookes mentioned, the whole show me, don't tell me. Same deal here. Like, be memorable. Give very specific answers, so that way because they're going to interview 3 different individuals, and you need to make sure that what you say sticks with someone for several weeks until that committee finally gets together again to reflect on that. Have fun in the process. You're going out to dinner, you're gonna be wined and dined. Yeah, you're gonna be nervous, but connect and enjoy, and try to really interact with those students and share who you are as a person and as an individual, as a professional, and what motivates you. Same with your research. You want to get people leaving your research like excited about, wow, they're doing amazing things. We need that person here at our university because they're a mover and a shaker. And this is a great point. I think Rebecca mentioned this already too. You are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. This could potentially be a 25, 30-year career decision. And so you need to make sure it's the right place for you, for your family, for your future research as a professional. So is this a place that could be home? So make sure that you are keeping your eye out for that and not being so caught up on checking all the boxes. You need to make sure you take it in and you see what's going on and what's happening at that university, and is it a good fit for you?
So I want to add one piece to that, and that is, we in the interview, there are those 3 components that we talked about in terms of research, teaching, and the meetings. But the other thing that's critical in higher ed jobs is there's a whole host of things that go on that aren't teaching or research. There are tons of committees, and there is lots of work that needs to be done that is outside of those 2 areas. And it is hugely important that departments hire people that are helpful and that are willing to participate and assist with committees. And, I know all of you have been on teams in school where you have a group of 4 or 5 and 2 or 3 people do nothing. They barely even show up to the meetings. Universities have the same problems. We sometimes have faculty members who don't contribute and they don't volunteer to serve on committees, or they're on committees and they don't always show up, or they don't provide much in terms of contributing. So it is really important that you think about how you can contribute to that department beyond just teaching and research. They want team players. You know, departments really are a team of people. Even though we have our own classrooms and our own things, we are part of a larger team. And for a department to be successful, the team needs to function as a team. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, great point, Rebecca. We call it, do they play well in the sandbox with others?
Absolutely. That is absolutely it. And faculty that don't play well in the sandbox can be a real challenge. So make sure that you can play in the sandbox. So lastly, you know, waiting can be really hard, and it's important to understand that it takes a long time. So if they're bringing 3 faculty members to campus, they might be doing 1 per week. And if you were the first candidate interviewed, it might be at least 4 weeks until you hear something. And even once it's determined, let's say that, you know, you have the 3 candidates and you say, yeah, often you don't get to just say, we picked this one. You have to rank them for the higher ups to approve. And so the chair has to approve it, the dean has to approve it. And really you're saying, is this person acceptable or is this person not acceptable? And so you might have all 3 of them are acceptable, and you might express your interest in a particular person. But let's say then that person gets offered the position and they take a job somewhere else. Well, then they're going to look at the next candidate. So all of that process takes time. So in theory, if you were the 3rd acceptable candidate and they offered it, you know, it took 3 weeks for them to get through, and then, you know, they gave a person a week to decide, and then they don't take it, and then the next person has a week to decide. It could take well over a month for you to hear about a particular job interview. So it is important to be patient, and there are a lot of factors that play into the timeline. And again, it's not just the committee. So once you get to the hiring piece, it has to go and get approvals all the way up through the dean level. And so please be patient and realize that just because you haven't heard doesn't mean that you're not in the running. If it's been 2 months, you know, you might email the chair and say, just following up and wondering if you have a timeline, or if you get offers for other jobs and you're interested in this one more than another. It's fine to ask and ask the chair if they have a timeline on when they're going to be making any decisions. And if they can tell you, they'll often share something with you. So the last piece here, oh, and also, you know, if you are the top candidate, you likely get a phone call saying, you know, we want to, you know, offer you a position, whatever, and it will come from likely the chair.
So answer calls that are, you know, you don't know the number, unlisted if you're doing a search, because it could potentially be the dean or department chair.
Yeah, good tip, Melissa, very good tip. But I'm sure they would leave you a message to call back. But yeah, good idea to, you know, answer your calls during that interview time period. And then the last piece is negotiating. Usually you can look online and find out what the salary schedule is. And depending on what kind of experience you come in with, you may be able to negotiate. If you've already taught in higher ed for a number of years, you may be able to negotiate years of service towards when you apply for tenure. That has pros and cons, because let's say you get 2 years of service, but now you only have 3 years to get additional publications out. So you have to think carefully about some of those, you know, negotiating decisions. You also should look at the salary schedule, and if you have no experience, it may just be the starting salary schedule for assistant professor. But if you can negotiate at all, you should, because I know in California, at least where I am, and I think the CSUs are all doing the same thing right now. You get hired as an assistant professor, and then you have 7 years to get tenure, and you may not get another raise unless there's just an across the board raise until you go up for tenure and promotion. So we have done better in the last few years of getting just sort of like cost of living increase raises in California, but you might want to look at that. Are there step increases where you're working, or are you only getting raises upon promotion to the next level? Or is it merit-based? Some universities do merit-based increases. So those are all good questions to ask. And then also, do they provide moving expenses? And is there any extra startup money for your research or for professional development, whatever? Often there's a little bit that new faculty will get, and they can kind of use it how they want. And lastly, benefits and pension information. So depending on the campus, if they're unionized, they may have a pension plan. So you get a pension when you retire. Most campuses probably have more like a 401k, so a retirement plan where you pay in and then the campus pays in a portion. So those are other things you might be thinking about in terms of the long term. If you're going to be at a university for the next 30 years, how are you planning for your retirement?
All right. And finally, if you are not selected, don't take it personal. There's so many factors that go into a search. Committee decision, dean decision, department chair decision, the research presentation, the presentation to the students, playing well in the sandbox with others. There's so many different things. So don't take it personal. Just sometimes things, get political with regards to what that department is looking for at that particular time. So just do your best to try to knock it out of the park. So, you're that home run hitter, but if not, don't take it personal, apply, say, thank you, next, move on to the next one. Be like Ariana Grande, on to the next position, because maybe it was, that wasn't for you, but find the one that is for you. All right, we did it. So at this time, let's open it up for some questions, either higher ed or for practitioners. Oh, Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, I'm currently studying physical education in college right now, and I have a concentration in adapted PE. And I was curious, how much do you guys look at a concentration versus a master's in adapted PE? So I'm interested in health for the master's, so I get the all-around education.
Rachel, where do you live?
New York.
Okay, so the requirements for teaching adaptive PE are different depending on what state you live in. So if you have a concentration in adaptive PE in New York, I think you're okay, but I would check with any of the SUNYs and ask them about the requirements for adaptive PE. If you have a teaching credential in PE and you have a concentration in adapted, I think that may meet the requirements for New York, but anybody here on the committee know the answer to that? Check with your state. I know if you contacted any of the adapted folks in higher ed there, they could tell you the answer to that question. And if that's the case, then you may very well want to do your master's in health.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah,
and there's
also,
from Brad. Do you
yeah,
see
in the
chat?
in the chat, Brad Wiener he's in Virginia, which is nearby. Oh, he's trying to recruit you a position in AP at Fairfax County. Love it. Attaway, Brad. Any other questions? Y'all letting us off easy?
Yeah.
All right, then. No other questions. We'll take it. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Dale, Brooks, Katrina, Rebecca. Very nicely done all. Much appreciated. The NCPEID AP Collaborative will be back in May, and we're planning to have the APE Teacher of the Year on as a panel to talk about their favorite APE teaching tips. So keep posted, and we will let you know the date and time upcoming. So thanks all. Till next time.